Henry Lawson arrived at his office at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes early, always 13. He paused at the doorway, scanning. The desk sat at its exact angle. The pen holder, 3 inches from the lamp. The coffee cup, he frowned, half a centimeter off. He adjusted it. In the corner, a small plant stood by the window, leaves green, soil damp. Someone watered it. He didn't know who, didn't ask. Victoria appeared shortly after 6. "Everything's in order. Mr. Lawson." He nodded without looking at her. At his desk, he straightened his tie in the reflection of his computer screen. Perfect knot, perfect collar. Behind him, the plant sat in silence, the only thing in this building he hadn't placed there himself. Down the hall, a light glowed. The supply room, still on since last night. Someone had been here all along. "If you're settling in somewhere quiet this morning, perhaps with your coffee, I'd love to know where you're joining from. They say good company makes the journey easier." The supply room door was ajar. Henry pushed it open. The smell hit him first: stale air, cleaning solution, something faintly human. Sweat, maybe. Sleep. A woman lay curled on a broken chair in the corner, her uniform wrinkled, hair loose from its tie. One shoe had slipped off her foot. His jaw tightened. She stirred, opened her eyes, saw him. For a moment, neither moved. Then she sat up, straightening her shirt with trembling hands. Her eyes were red, ringed with dark circles. "Mr. Lawson, don't." He stepped back. His pulse thudded in his ears. "Victoria, now." 3 minutes later, Victoria stood beside him, clipboard in hand. "I had concerns about her," Victoria said. Her voice carried just the right note of reluctance. "She's been arriving late, cutting corners. I didn't want to say anything without proof. But—" Henry stared at the woman, Maria. The name came to him now, still standing by the broken chair. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. "You slept here," he said. "In my building, on my time." Maria looked at the floor. Her hands hung at her sides. "I trusted this system." His voice rose. Other employees had gathered near the doorway. He didn't care. "I trusted that everyone here earned their place, and this is what I find." Still nothing from her. No excuse, no explanation. "You're done," he said. "Get your things. Security will escort you out." Maria lifted her head. Her eyes met his just for a second. Something flickered there. Not anger, not fear. Something he couldn't name. "I understand, sir." 3 words. Quiet. Steady. She picked up her shoe, slipped it on, walked past him without another glance. The employees parted for her. No one spoke. The elevator doors opened, swallowed her, closed. Henry exhaled. The tension in his shoulders loosened. Order restored. Problem solved. He turned to Victoria. "Make sure this doesn't happen again." "Of course." "Mr. Lawson." And he walked back toward his office, footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Behind him, the small crowd dispersed. He didn't see Mr. Harrison standing near the service entrance. Didn't notice the old security guard watching Maria's elevator descend, his weathered hands gripping his cap, his eyes wet and red. The next morning, Henry arrived at 5:47 again, 13 minutes early, the ritual unchanged. He stepped into his office. The desk sat at its proper angle, the lamp, the pen holder, the chair all in place. Victoria had assured him everything would be handled. A replacement would begin today. The system would continue. He set his briefcase down, removed his coat, hung it on the 3rd hook from the left. Then he stopped. Something was different. He couldn't name it at first. The room looked correct. The proportions matched. But there was a wrongness in the air, faint as dust. His eyes moved to the corner. The plant. Yesterday, its leaves had been green, full. Today, 2 of them had yellowed at the edges. The soil looked pale, cracked, dry. Henry frowned. He walked closer, touched the dirt with one finger. It crumbled. Nobody had watered it. He straightened, wiping his hand on his handkerchief. Behind him, the door opened. "Good morning, Mr. Lawson." Victoria's heels clicked on the tile. "I trust you slept well." He didn't answer. His gaze moved across the room. The curtains, they were off. Not by much. A degree, maybe two, but the morning light fell differently now, sharper on the left side. The new cleaner started this morning, Victoria continued. She's still learning, but I'm confident she'll adjust quickly. Henry nodded. He walked to his desk, sat down. The coffee cup was there, as always. He reached for it, paused. The angle was wrong. It faced him straight on, centered, like something from a catalog. He turned it slightly to the right, 15 degrees, the way he liked it, the way it had always been, until today. Is everything all right, sir? Victoria stood by the door, clipboard pressed to her chest. Her smile was measured, professional. Fine, he said. She nodded and left. Henry leaned back in his chair. His eyes drifted to the plant again. One of the yellow leaves had fallen to the floor. He didn't move to pick it up. Instead, he stared at it, this small, dead thing lying on his polished tile. And for the first time in years, a question surfaced that he couldn't answer. How much had she done that he never saw? The thought irritated him. He pushed it away, rose from his chair, walked out of his office. The cleaning station sat at the end of the hall. A small alcove, no window, a metal cart, mops, bottles of solution, a locker, Maria's locker. The name tag had already been removed. The door hung slightly open. Henry pulled it wider. Inside, nothing. Empty hangers. A faded air freshener clipped to the vent. He started to close it, then stopped. Something white caught his eye. A scrap of paper, wedged into the corner of the top shelf, folded once. He reached for it. His fingers brushed cold metal before finding the edge. The paper was soft, worn at the creases, written in small, careful handwriting. He unfolded it. A list. Water plant 6 a.m. See what's boys Check all locks 6:15 a.m. Wipe meeting room windows 6:30 a.m. Restock bathroom supplies 6:45 a.m. Vacuum executive hallway 7 a.m. Empty trash all floors 7:30 a.m. Spot clean lobby chairs 8 a.m. It went on, task after task, timed to the quarter hour, more than a full shift's worth. Henry's jaw tightened. He flipped the paper over. One final line. Different ink. Added later, perhaps. Mr. Lawson's coffee cup 15 degrees to the right. He never said it, but I noticed. His hand stilled. He read the line again. 15 degrees. The exact angle. The habit he'd never spoken aloud. Not to Victoria. Not to anyone. How did she know? He folded the paper slowly, slid it into his jacket pocket. For a long moment, he stood there, in the narrow alcove, surrounded by the smell of bleach and lemon. The hum of the air system pressed against his ears. The plant was dying. The curtains were wrong. The coffee cup had been centered. And Maria, the woman he'd fired in front of everyone, had noticed things he never told her. He walked back to his office, sat at his desk, looked at the coffee cup, still turned to the right where he'd adjusted it. 15 degrees. She had watched him, studied him, not to manipulate, not to gain favor. She had simply paid attention. Victoria knocked once and entered. Just checking in, she said. The new cleaner should have the routine down by end of week. Henry nodded. You made the right decision yesterday, she added. Sometimes you have to cut the weak links. He looked at her. Her posture was perfect, her smile unwavering. Yes, he said. I'm sure I did. She left. Henry pulled the folded paper from his pocket, spread it flat on his desk. The handwriting was neat, precise. Every line accounted for. He thought of Maria's face when he'd fired her, the way she hadn't argued, hadn't begged. I understand, sir. 3 words. And now this list. This evidence of invisible labor. This record of everything she did, every morning, before anyone else arrived. He picked up the paper, held it close. At the bottom, that final line stared back at him. He never said it, but I noticed. Henry's hand trembled just once. He set the paper down. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The yellow leaf still lay on the floor beneath the wilting plant. He hadn't picked it up. He didn't move to now. He just sat there, staring at the words she'd left behind, and for the first time, he wondered what else he had missed. Henry saw Mr. Harrison near the service entrance that afternoon. The old security guard stood with his back to the wall, cap in his hands. His fingers twisted the brim slowly. His eyes followed Henry as he approached, then dropped to the floor. Henry slowed. He hadn't intended to stop, but something in the man's posture, the way his shoulders curved inward, the way his thumbs pressed white against the fabric, made him pause. "Mr. Harrison." "Sir." The guard's voice was rough, quiet. Henry glanced toward the elevator. He should keep walking. Return to his office. The incident was closed. Maria was gone. The system was intact, but the folded note sat heavy in his jacket pocket. 15 degrees. She had noticed. "You were here yesterday," Henry said. "When I dismissed her." Mr. Harrison didn't look up. "Yes, sir." "You watched her leave." A pause. The old man's hand stilled on his cap. "I did, sir." Henry waited. The lobby hummed with distant voices, the soft chime of elevators arriving and departing. A clock on the far wall ticked. Mr. Harrison lifted his head. His eyes were tired, red at the edges. "Look," he said, his voice dropping. "I ain't supposed to say nothing. I know that. But Maria, she had her reasons. Mr. Lawson, she did." Henry's jaw tightened. "Reasons for sleeping in my building." "Yes, sir." Mr. Harrison swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed. "Her mama, she's real sick. St. Mary's Hospital, 3rd floor. Been there 2 months now. Maria was working double shifts. Days here, nights watching the building, trying to cover the bills." The clock ticked. A woman in heels walked past, her footsteps sharp on the marble. "She never told nobody," Mr. Harrison continued. "Never complained, just kept working. I only found out because I saw her one night, leaving at 4 in the morning. Asked where she was going. She said the hospital opened visiting hours early for family." Henry said nothing. His hand moved to his pocket, touched the edge of the folded paper. "She wasn't lazy, sir." Mr. Harrison's voice cracked. "She was running on fumes. That's why she fell asleep, because she hadn't rested proper in weeks." He put his cap back on, adjusted it with trembling fingers. "I should have said something before. I know I should have, but I was scared. This job, it's all I got left." He turned and walked away, his shoes scuffing against the tile. Henry stood alone in the lobby. The clock ticked. The elevators chimed. The world continued. But something had shifted. A crack, thin as a hair, spreading through the floor beneath his feet. That night, Henry couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that pressed against the ears and wouldn't let go. He turned on his side. The sheets rustled. The mattress creaked. The note. He had left it on his nightstand, folded once, edges soft from handling. Mr. Lawson's coffee cup, 15 degrees to the right. He never said it, but I noticed. He closed his eyes, opened them again. 15 degrees. A small thing. The kind of preference a person develops without thinking, without announcing. And she had seen it. Not because he told her, not because Victoria instructed her. She had watched him, studied his habits, adjusted her work to match his unspoken needs. She had paid attention to him not as a boss, not as a name on a schedule, but as a person. And he hadn't even known her name until he fired her. Henry sat up, swung his legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cold beneath his bare feet. He walked to the nightstand, picked up the note, read it again in the dim light from the window. He never said it, but I noticed. His hand shook, just slightly. St. Mary's Hospital, 3rd floor. She had a mother there, sick, maybe dying. And Maria had been working herself hollow trying to save her. He set the note down, pressed his palms against the wood. The surface was smooth, cool. He had fired her in front of everyone, hadn't asked a single question, hadn't given her a chance to explain. Because he was right. He was always right. That was the rule. That was how the system worked. But the system hadn't told him about the hospital, about the mother, about the double shifts and the sleepless nights. The system had only told him what he wanted to hear. The next morning, Henry arrived early again, 5:47, 13 minutes. He walked through the lobby, took the elevator to the top floor, started toward his office, then stopped. Victoria's door was closed, but he needed to ask her something. About Maria's file, about what else she might have known. He walked toward her office, reached for the handle. Her voice carried through the gap. "Don't worry," she was saying. "She's gone. Nobody suspects a thing." Henry's breath caught. He pressed closer to the wall. The carpet muffled his weight. "I told you I'd handle it." Victoria's tone was different now, not the measured professionalism she used with him. This was sharper, colder. She was getting too close, asking questions. "It's better this way." A pause. Someone on the other end of the line spoke. "No, he doesn't know anything. He thinks it was his decision." A soft laugh. "That's the beauty of it. He always thinks it's his decision." Henry's hand found the wall. His fingers pressed against the cold surface. "Look, I've got to go. He'll be here any minute. Just keep your head down. I'll handle the rest." The click of a phone being set down. Footsteps. Heels on tile. Henry stepped back. Quickly. Quietly. Down the hall. Around the corner. He leaned against the wall, his pulse hammered in his throat. His palms were slick. She was getting too close. Asking questions. He always thinks it's his decision. Henry stared at the floor. The polished tile reflected the fluorescent lights above. Everything looked the same as it had 5 minutes ago. The same building. The same walls. The same morning. But nothing was the same. He had trusted Victoria for 5 years, relied on her judgment, followed her recommendations without question. And Maria, the woman he'd fired, the woman who noticed things nobody else did, had been getting too close. Close to what? He reached into his pocket, felt the folded paper. He never said it, but I noticed. Maria had noticed things. Victoria had wanted her gone, and Henry had done exactly what Victoria wanted without ever realizing it. Henry found Mr. Harrison the next morning. The old guard stood by the loading dock, clipboard in hand, checking deliveries. Diesel fumes hung thick in the air. A truck rumbled past, its engine coughing exhaust. Mr. Harrison looked up when Henry approached. His face went still. "Mr. Lawson, tell me everything," Henry said. Mr. Harrison set the clipboard down on a crate. His hands found his cap again, twisting the brim the way they had before. "Sir, I already told you." "No." Henry stepped closer. "You told me pieces. The hospital. The double shifts. I want all of it." A forklift beeped somewhere behind them. Workers shouted instructions across the loading bay. Mr. Harrison glanced toward the building, then back at Henry. "She never wanted nobody to know," he said quietly. "Maria, she's proud. Too proud. Maybe. Wouldn't take help from nobody." "Her mother," Henry pressed. "What's wrong with her?" Mr. Harrison exhaled. His shoulders dropped. "Cancer, sir. Started in her lungs. Spread to her bones. Doctors gave her 6 months, back when it began. That was 8 months ago." Henry's jaw tightened. The diesel smell burned in his nostrils. "Maria moved her mama here from another state." Mr. Harrison continued. "Better doctors," she said. "Better chance. But the bills, they're eating her alive. Insurance don't cover half of it. So she took the night shift here, watching the building after hours, cleaning during the day. 18, 20 hours sometimes. More when her mama had a bad spell." A truck horn blared. Workers scrambled to clear a path. "She ain't never complained," Mr. Harrison said. "Not once. Just kept showing up, kept working, even when she could barely stand." Henry reached into his pocket. His fingers brushed the folded note. "Why didn't she say something when I—" He stopped. The words stuck in his throat. Mr. Harrison looked at him. Something shifted in the old man's eyes. "Would you have listened, sir?" The question hung there, heavy, unanswerable. Henry turned away, walked back toward his car. St. Mary's Hospital sat on the east side of the city, red brick, white trim, the kind of building that had seen generations pass through its doors. Henry parked in the visitor lot that afternoon, sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel. The engine ticked as it cooled. 3rd floor. That's what Mr. Harrison had said. He got out, crossed the parking lot. The automatic doors slid open, releasing a wave of antiseptic air, disinfectant, and floor wax, and something underneath something human and fragile. The lobby was busy. Nurses in scrubs pushing carts, visitors carrying flowers and brown paper bags, an old man in a wheelchair, oxygen tube looped under his nose, staring at nothing. Henry found the elevator, pressed the button for the third floor. The doors closed. The car rose. Soft music played from a speaker somewhere above him, something instrumental, forgettable. When the doors opened, the hallway stretched before him. White walls, beige tile, fluorescent lights humming overhead, room numbers mounted on small plaques beside each door. He walked slowly. His footsteps echoed. Room 312, 314, 316. He stopped at 318. The door was slightly open. Through the gap, he could see the edge of a bed. White sheets, a thin blanket, monitors blinking green and red. He pushed the door open a few more inches. Maria sat in a plastic chair beside the bed. Her back was to him. She held an old woman's hand, thin, veined, pale against the sheets. The old woman's eyes were closed. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Maria's head was bowed. Her shoulders curved inward. She wasn't speaking, wasn't crying. She just sat there, holding her mother's hand, thumb stroking the papery skin. A vase of wilted flowers sat on the nightstand. Get well cards, faded and curling at the edges. A rosary hung from the bed rail, wooden beads clicking softly with each breath. Henry stood in the doorway. His hand rested on the frame. The room smelled of medicine and clean linen and something else lavender. Maybe an air freshener plugged into the wall, trying to mask what couldn't be masked. Maria shifted in her chair, adjusted the blanket over her mother's feet, smoothed a strand of gray hair from the old woman's forehead. Such small gestures, such quiet care. Henry's throat tightened. He had stood in front of her 3 days ago, called her lazy, called her a problem, dismissed her like a piece of broken equipment. And here she was, holding her dying mother's hand, in a hospital room she couldn't afford. He stepped back. His shoe scraped against the tile. Maria's head turned slightly. He froze, but she didn't look toward the door, just adjusted her grip on her mother's hand and settled back into stillness. Henry retreated, quietly, carefully, down the hall, into the elevator, through the lobby, out into the parking lot. The sunlight hit his face. He squinted against it. He stood beside his car, keys in hand. His pulse thudded in his ears. She hadn't seen him, hadn't known he was there, and somehow that made it worse. He climbed into the car, sat behind the wheel, stared through the windshield at the hospital's brick facade. He understood now, the exhaustion, the desperation, the silent endurance. Maria hadn't slept in his supply room because she was lazy. She had slept there because she had nowhere else to go, no time to rest, no one to help her carry the weight, and he had thrown her out. Henry reached into his glove compartment, found his checkbook, a pen. He wrote slowly, deliberately. The numbers came easily. $50,000, enough to cover the bills, enough to give her breathing room, enough to make things right. He signed his name at the bottom, tore the check from the book. This was how he fixed things. This was what he knew. Money solved problems. Money made things right. He looked at the check in his hand. The paper was crisp, the ink still drying. He would find her tomorrow. Give her this. Explain that he understood now, that he wanted to help. She would accept it. Of course she would. Who wouldn't? He tucked the check into his jacket pocket, started the car, pulled out of the lot. The drive home was quiet. The city passed in a blur of lights and shadows. In his pocket, the check sat folded beside the note. He never said it, but I noticed. He had noticed her now. Finally. And he would make it right. Money could do that. Money always could. He was sure of it. The next morning, Henry returned to the hospital. Same parking lot, same automatic doors, same antiseptic smell. He took the elevator to the third floor, walked down the hallway, room 318. This time, Maria was in the corridor. She stood by a vending machine, counting coins in her palm. Her uniform was gone, just a simple blouse, wrinkled at the collar, her hair pulled back tight. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. Her face went blank. "Mr. Lawson." He stopped a few feet away, the check pressed against his chest. "I came to—" He paused, reached into his jacket, pulled out the folded paper. "I want you to have this." He held it out to her. Maria looked at the check. Her eyes moved across the numbers, the zeros, his signature at the bottom. She didn't reach for it. $50,000, Henry said, "for your mother's treatment, for whatever you need." Maria's gaze lifted to his face. She studied him the way she might study a stain on a floor. Something to be assessed, understood. "No," she said. "Thank you." Maria bent to retrieve a water bottle from the vending machine tray. Her movements were slow, deliberate. She straightened, twisted off the cap, took a small sip. Henry's arm stayed extended. The check hung in the air between them. "I don't understand," he said. Maria turned to face him fully. Her eyes were calm, clear. No anger in them, no resentment. Just a steady, measured gaze that made him want to look away. "You fired me in front of everyone," she said. "In the lobby, with all those people watching." Henry opened his mouth, closed it. "You didn't ask me why I was sleeping there." Maria's voice stayed level, quiet. "You didn't ask if something was wrong. You didn't ask me anything at all." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A nurse walked past, shoes squeaking on the tile. Somewhere down the hall, a machine beeped in steady rhythm. "I was going to explain," Henry said. "I would have listened if you'd—" "No." Maria shook her head once. "You wouldn't have." "I saw your face, Mr. Lawson. You had already decided, before you even walked into that room." Henry's throat constricted. He couldn't swallow. "I made a mistake," he said. "I know that now. That's why I'm here. That's why I want to help." Maria looked at the check still trembling in his hand, then back at his face. "You want to help," she repeated. "With money." "Yes. Because money fixes things. It can help. It can." "You know what hurt the most." Henry stopped. Maria's voice dropped. Not softer. Exactly. Just more bare. More direct. "You didn't even look at me. Not once. I was there every morning, Mr. Lawson, every single morning for 2 years. I watered your plant. I adjusted your curtains. I set your coffee cup exactly the way you liked it. And you never once looked at me." The words landed one by one, each one heavier than the last. "I was just a problem," Maria said. "Something to fix. Something to remove. Not a person. Just a thing in your building that wasn't working right." Henry's hand trembled. The check rustled. "I didn't know about your mother," he said. "I didn't know about the double shifts. If I had known, would it have mattered?" The question hung there. Henry had no answer. Maria stepped closer, not aggressive, just present, close enough that he could see the lines of exhaustion around her eyes, the gray threading through her hair at the temples, the calluses on her fingers from years of work. "I don't need your money. Mr. Lawson, my mother and I, we've been taking care of each other for a long time. We'll find a way. We always do." She paused, looked at him with something that might have been pity, or maybe just weariness. "What I needed was for someone to see me, just once, to ask if I was okay, to treat me like a human being instead of a name on a schedule." Henry's chest ached. His breath came shallow. "I'm sorry," he said. The words scraped out of him, rough and uneven. "I didn't—" "I know," Maria nodded slowly. "You didn't. That's exactly the problem." She turned away, walked back toward her mother's room. "Maria," she stopped, didn't turn around. "Please," he said, "let me do something. Anything." Maria looked over her shoulder. Her face was neutral, patient. The face of someone who had stopped expecting things from people a long time ago. "You can't buy your way out of this, Mr. Lawson. Some things don't work that way." She walked into room 318. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Henry stood in the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the corridor, a monitor beeped in steady rhythm. Footsteps echoed. Voices murmured behind closed doors. He looked at the check in his hand. $50,000. Enough to pay for months of treatment. enough to ease her burden, enough to make things right. But she didn't want it. He had driven here thinking he understood the solution. Write a check, hand it over, problem solved, the way he solved everything. And she had said no, not with anger, not with pride, just with quiet certainty. You can't buy your way out of this. He folded the check slowly, slipped it back into his pocket. His fingers brushed the other paper there, the note from Maria's locker. He never said it, but I noticed. She had noticed everything about him, his habits, his preferences, his unspoken needs. And he had noticed nothing about her. Henry walked down the hallway. His footsteps sounded hollow, empty. The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside, pressed the button for the lobby, watched the doors close. His reflection stared back at him from the polished metal. A man in an expensive suit, gray at the temples, lines around the eyes. A man who had everything and understood nothing. The lobby was crowded when he emerged. Visitors coming and going, wheelchairs rolling past, children clutching balloons. Henry walked through them, invisible, unnoticed. He pushed through the automatic doors. The afternoon sun hit his face, warm and bright. He squinted against it. His car sat in the visitor lot, gleaming under the light. Clean, perfect, exactly where he'd left it. He didn't move toward it. Instead, he stood on the hospital steps, hands at his sides, check useless in his pocket. She had refused him. Nobody refused him. Not employees, not board members, not anyone who needed what he could give. But Maria had looked at him with those tired, patient eyes and said, "No, thank you," and walked away. Not because she didn't need the money. She did, desperately, but because money wasn't what she needed from him. "You didn't even look at me." Henry's hands hung loose. He stared at the parking lot, at the cars coming and going, at the ordinary chaos of ordinary life. He was a millionaire. He could buy buildings, companies, influence, but he couldn't buy back 2 years of blindness, couldn't purchase the moment he should have asked her name, couldn't afford the simple act of seeing another human being. He had nothing she wanted, and that, more than anything, left him hollow. That evening, Henry sat alone in his study. The house was dark, silent, the kind of silence that settled into the bones. On his desk, the check lay unfolded. Beside it, Maria's note, 2 pieces of paper, one worth $50,000, one worth nothing at all, and the worthless one was the only thing that mattered. He picked it up, read it again. He never said it, but I noticed. Maria had noticed. Maria had cared, and Victoria had wanted her gone. She was getting too close, asking questions. The words from Victoria's phone call echoed in his mind. Close to what? What had Maria seen? What questions had she been asking? Henry set the note down. His eyes moved to the corner of his study. A framed photograph sat on the shelf. Eleanor, his wife, 5 years gone. He hadn't looked at it in months, couldn't bear to. But tonight, something pulled at him, a thread he couldn't name. He stood, walked to the shelf, picked up the photograph. Eleanor smiled back at him. The same smile she'd had on their wedding day, the same smile she'd worn until the end. And somewhere, in the back of his mind, a question formed, one he couldn't answer, one that would keep him awake all night. Henry didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study until midnight, staring at Eleanor's photograph. Then he moved to the living room, poured himself a drink he didn't touch, watched the ice melt. At 2 a.m, he found himself standing in the upstairs hallway. The door at the end was closed. Eleanor's room, her study, the place where she had kept her things. He hadn't opened it in 5 years, hadn't allowed the cleaning service to touch it, hadn't even walked past it if he could help it. But tonight, something pulled at him. The photograph downstairs, Maria's words at the hospital, the question he couldn't shake. "You didn't even look at me." Eleanor would have looked. Eleanor always looked. His hand found the doorknob, cold brass, tarnished at the edges. He turned it. The door swung inward. The room smelled like her, not her perfume that had faded years ago, but something underneath. Paper and leather and the faint trace of lavender, the scent of a life that had ended but refused to disappear completely. Henry stepped inside. His feet left prints in the thin layer of dust on the hardwood. Eleanor's desk sat by the window. Her books lined the shelves: poetry, history, gardening guides. Her reading chair faced the garden, a blanket still draped over its arm. He had preserved it like a museum, a shrine to a woman who would never return. On the desk, a wooden box, dark oak, brass hinges. He had given it to her on their 20th anniversary, her keepsake box. Henry's hands trembled as he lifted the lid. Inside, letters tied with ribbon, photographs with curled edges, ticket stubs from concerts they'd attended decades ago, a dried flower pressed between pages. Small things, ordinary things, the artifacts of a marriage. He lifted the letters carefully, set them aside. Beneath them, a leather journal, navy blue, her initials embossed in gold on the cover. Eleanor's diary. He had never read it, never wanted to. Her thoughts were hers, private, sacred. But now, he opened the cover. The pages were yellowed. Her handwriting filled them, neat, slanted, familiar as his own face. He flipped through, random entries, notes about books she was reading, observations about the garden, a recipe she wanted to try. Then he stopped. A date. 10 years ago. The ink slightly different. A new pen, perhaps. Today I met a girl named Maria Santos. Henry's breath caught in his chest. Car accident on Maple Street. I was driving home from the market when I saw it happen. A delivery truck ran the light, hit her crossing the street. She was young, alone. No one stopped. He read on. I pulled over, called an ambulance, stayed with her until they came. She was conscious but couldn't move. Her leg was twisted wrong, blood on the pavement. She kept apologizing. Sorry for the trouble. Sorry for making me late. Henry's hands shook. The pages rustled. I rode with her to the hospital. They said she had no family nearby, no insurance, nothing. Just a girl from somewhere else, working 2 jobs to send money home to her mother. The words blurred. Henry blinked, forced himself to continue. I paid her medical bills, anonymously at first, but she found out, came to thank me when she could walk again. Small thing, dark hair, tired eyes. But when she smiled, something lit up, something strong. He turned the page. We stayed in touch. I helped her find a better apartment, a steadier job. She wouldn't take charity, too proud, but she accepted guidance, mentorship. She called me once a week just to check in, to tell me how she was doing. Another page. Maria is the strongest girl I've ever met. She has nothing, and yet she gives everything she has. I told Henry about her once. I don't think he was listening. The journal slipped from Henry's fingers. It landed on the floor with a soft thud. He didn't pick it up. His hands hung at his sides, empty, useless. Eleanor had saved her. Eleanor had helped her. And he had fired her, in front of everyone, without a single question. He sank to his knees beside Eleanor's desk. The hardwood was cold through his trousers. Dust clung to his palms. His eyes moved to the keepsake box. Something else was there, beneath the letters. A photograph, face down. He reached for it. His hand shook so badly he almost dropped it. He turned it over. 2 women, standing beside a hospital bed. One in a gown, leg in a cast. One in a blue dress, holding a bouquet of yellow roses. Eleanor and Maria, 10 years younger, both smiling. On the back, Eleanor's handwriting. Maria, the strongest girl I've ever met. One day, she'll shine. The photograph fell from Henry's hand. It landed beside the journal, face up. 2 smiles looking at him from the dusty floor. His wife had believed in her. His wife had saved her. And he had thrown her away like garbage. Henry's chest heaved. His breath came in ragged gasps. He looked around the room at Eleanor's books, her chair, her things, and saw himself through her eyes. The man who didn't listen. The man who couldn't see. The man who had taken everything she built and destroyed it without even knowing. His hands found his face, pressed against his eyes. His fingernails dug into his forehead. What had he become? A machine. A system. A process for sorting people into categories, useful or not, trustworthy or not, worth his time or not. Maria had been worth Eleanor's time, worth her money, worth her love. And Henry had looked at her sleeping on a broken chair and seen nothing but a problem to eliminate. He pulled his hands away, looked at them, clean, manicured, the hands of a man who never got dirty, the hands of a man who had never done anything real. He tried to stand. His legs buckled. He caught himself on the desk, knocking over a cup of dried pens. They scattered across the floor, rolling into the dust. He didn't pick them up. Instead, he slid down the side of the desk, sat on the floor, back against the wood, legs stretched out in front of him. The photograph lay beside him. Eleanor's smile, Maria's smile. Two women he had failed in different ways. He had failed Eleanor by not listening. He had failed Maria by not seeing. And now it was too late. No. The thought cut through him. It wasn't too late. Not yet. Maria was still at the hospital, still holding her mother's hand, still refusing his money because money wasn't what she needed. She needed to know that someone saw her, that someone finally understood what she had done, why she had done it. She had come to his company not for a job, not for money. She had come because Eleanor had been his wife, because working in his building, caring for his office, watering his plant, that was her way of repaying a debt she could never repay. She had been there every morning for 2 years, and he had never once looked at her. Henry sat on the floor of his dead wife's room, dust on his clothes, tears he refused to shed burning behind his eyes. The photograph lay beside him, the journal, the scattered pens. He had spent 5 years trying to control everything because control meant safety. Control meant no surprises. Control meant no one could hurt him the way Eleanor's death had hurt him. But control had made him blind, blind to Victoria's manipulation, blind to Maria's sacrifice, blind to everything that mattered. He picked up the photograph, wiped the dust from Eleanor's face with his thumb, then Maria's. I told Henry about her once. I don't think he was listening. He hadn't been. He never was. He slipped the photograph into his jacket pocket, beside the check, beside the note. 3 pieces of paper, 3 pieces of evidence, 3 proofs of his failure. He pulled himself up. His knees ached. His back protested. He was 62 years old, and he felt every year of it. Tomorrow, he would go back to the office. Tomorrow, he would face what he had done, not with money, not with excuses, with the only thing he had left to give, the truth. He didn't sleep that night either. He lay in bed, eyes open, ceiling dark. The photograph sat on his nightstand now, Eleanor and Maria, smiling. He had one chance, one moment, one decision. He could protect himself, stay quiet, let the world keep turning as it always had. Or he could stand in front of everyone, the same people who had watched him fire Maria, and admit that he was wrong. His stomach churned. His palms went damp against the sheets. He had never admitted being wrong, not once, not in 30 years of business, not in 25 years of marriage. I don't think he was listening. Eleanor's words, written in her diary, about him. She had known, even then. She had known he didn't listen, didn't see. And she had loved him anyway. Henry closed his eyes. He owed Maria the truth, but more than that, he owed Eleanor. He owed her the man she had believed he could become. The question was simple. Could he do it? Could he stand in front of his entire company and say the 3 words he had never said in his life? I was wrong. Henry arrived at the office at 5:47 a.m. His eyes burned. 3rd night without proper sleep. His shirt was wrinkled beneath his jacket he hadn't noticed until now. His tie felt too tight against his throat. The lobby was empty. The security desk unmanned except for the night guard finishing his shift. The elevator hummed as it carried him to the top floor. His footsteps echoed in the silent hallway. Past Victoria's office, past the conference room, to his own door. He didn't go inside. Instead, he stood in the corridor, hand on the wall, breathing. The photograph was in his pocket. Eleanor and Maria, smiling. 10 years ago, he had spent all night staring at the ceiling. No rest, no peace, just the words circling in his mind, over and over. I was wrong. 3 words, simple, devastating. He had never said them, not to his board, not to his employees, not even to Eleanor when she was alive. And now he would say them in front of everyone. At 8 o'clock, he called Victoria into his office. She arrived promptly, clipboard in hand, smile in place. the same measured professionalism she had worn for 5 years. "Good morning, Mr. Lawson. You're here early." He looked at her, really looked. The careful posture, the practiced expression, the way her eyes moved, always calculating, always assessing. He had trusted this woman, relied on her judgment, followed her recommendations without question. She was getting too close, asking questions. He always thinks it's his decision. Her words from the phone call, her voice, cold and confident, thinking no one could hear. "I need you to schedule an all-hands meeting," Henry said. 30 minutes. The main lobby. Victoria's pen paused over her clipboard. "An all-hands is everything all right. Just do it." She studied him for a moment. Something flickered behind her eyes, uncertainty, maybe, or suspicion. "Of course, Mr. Lawson." She turned and left. Her heels clicked down the hallway. Sharp, precise. Henry sat at his desk, pulled the photograph from his pocket, looked at it one more time. Maria, the strongest girl I've ever met. Eleanor's handwriting, Eleanor's hope. He put the photograph face down on his desk, closed his eyes. 30 minutes. The lobby filled slowly. Employees trickled in from every department. Accountants in pressed shirts, assistants clutching tablets, maintenance staff in blue uniforms, security guards standing along the walls. They gathered in clusters, whispering to each other, glancing toward the small podium that had been set up near the elevators. The same spot where Henry had fired Maria 6 days ago. He stood in the hallway, watching through the glass doors. His palms were slick. His collar felt tight against his throat. Victoria appeared beside him. "Everyone's assembled. Mr. Lawson, shall I introduce you?" "No." He shook his head. "I'll go alone." He pushed through the doors. The whispers died. Every face turned toward him. 60 people, maybe more, standing in neat rows, waiting. Henry walked to the podium. His shoes clicked on the marble. The sound bounced off the high ceiling, amplified in the silence. He reached the microphone, adjusted it. The screech of feedback cut through the air. He looked out at the faces, young and old, nervous and curious. Some he recognized, most he didn't. These were his employees, his people, his system, and they had watched him fire Maria without a single objection, because he was the boss, because he was always right, because no one questioned Henry Lawson. His hands gripped the podium. The wood was smooth, cold. He opened his mouth, closed it. The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 20. Someone coughed. A phone vibrated in a pocket. Henry's throat constricted. His tongue felt thick, useless. He looked down at his hands. The knuckles were white. I was wrong. 3 words. That was all he needed. But they wouldn't come. They sat in his chest like stones, refusing to move. He looked up, found Mr. Harrison in the back row. The old guard stood with his cap in his hands, eyes fixed on Henry, waiting. These were the people who made his building run, who cleaned his floors, who watered his plants, who worked while he slept. And he had never seen them, not once. His grip on the podium loosened. His shoulders dropped. "I made a mistake," he said. His voice cracked. The microphone picked it up, amplified it. 6 days ago, I stood in this lobby and fired a woman named Maria Santos. I called her lazy. I called her a problem. I dismissed her in front of all of you without asking a single question. The silence was absolute. No one moved. I was wrong. The words came easier now, rougher, raw. Maria wasn't lazy. Waidzinski was exhausted. She was working double shifts, days here, nights watching this building to pay for her mother's cancer treatment. She hadn't slept in days. And when she finally collapsed from exhaustion, I fired her for it. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Henry pressed on. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that Maria had been here for 2 years. 2 years of cleaning my office, watering my plants, setting my coffee cup exactly the way I liked it. And I never once looked at her, never learned her name, never asked how she was doing. His voice broke. He paused, swallowed. I treated her like she was invisible, and she deserved better than that. He looked at Victoria. She stood near the front, clipboard clutched to her chest, face pale. "There's something else you should know," Henry said. I was told things about Maria, that she was unreliable, that she cut corners, that she couldn't be trusted. Those things weren't true. They were lies told by someone I trusted. Victoria's expression didn't change, but her knuckles went white around the clipboard. Victoria, Henry said, step forward. She didn't move. Step forward. Slowly. Victoria walked to the podium. Her heels clicked on the marble. Her chin stayed high. You told me Maria was unreliable, Henry said. You pushed for her termination. Why? Victoria's smile flickered. I was protecting the company. Mr. Lawson, she was a liability. She wasn't a liability. She was the most dedicated employee in this building. Henry's voice hardened. I heard you on the phone. You said she was getting too close, asking questions. You said I always think it's my decision. The color drained from Victoria's face. You manipulated me, Henry said. You used my trust to remove someone who threatened you, and I let you, because I was too blind to see what was happening. Victoria's composure cracked. I was protecting your interests. Maria was nobody, a cleaner. She didn't matter. She mattered to me. The words came out quiet, steady. She mattered to my wife. Victoria went still. 10 years ago, my wife saved Maria's life, paid her medical bills, helped her get back on her feet. Maria came to work here to repay that kindness by taking care of the things my wife used to take care of, by taking care of me. Henry's voice hardened. And you had her fired. Victoria's clipboard dropped. It clattered on the marble. You're done, Henry said. Security will escort you out. 2 guards stepped forward. Victoria looked at them, looked at the crowd, looked at Henry. Her face twisted. Something ugly passed behind her eyes. But there was nothing she could say, nothing she could do. She turned and walked toward the elevator. The crowd parted for her. No one spoke. The doors opened, swallowed her, closed. Henry stood at the podium. The lobby was silent. 60 faces stared at him. He had done it. He had admitted he was wrong. He had exposed Victoria. He had told the truth. But it wasn't enough. Maria still didn't know. She was still at the hospital, holding her mother's hand, thinking he was just another man who had thrown her away. He had one more thing to do. Henry drove to the hospital that afternoon, not in his usual car. He had taken the older one, the one Eleanor used to drive. It still smelled faintly of her, even after 5 years. Lavender and something else, something he couldn't name. He wore a simple jacket, no tie. His hands rested steady on the steering wheel. On the passenger seat, a small plant sat in a ceramic pot. The same plant from his office. The one Maria had watered every morning for 2 years. He had repotted it himself that morning, added fresh soil, trimmed the yellowed leaves. It wasn't much, but it was something real. St. Mary's Hospital looked different in the afternoon light, softer. The red brick glowed warm. Families sat on benches near the entrance, talking quietly, holding hands. Henry parked, lifted the plant carefully, walked through the automatic doors. The elevator took him to the 3rd floor. The hallway stretched before him, familiar now. Room 318. He stopped outside the door, took a breath. The antiseptic smell filled his lungs. Then he knocked. Maria opened the door. She looked at him, looked at the plant in his hands. Her expression didn't change. Mr. Lawson, I'm not here to give you anything, he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. I wanted to talk. If you'll let me. She studied him for a long moment. The same tired eyes, the same quiet strength. Then she stepped aside. The room was small, a single bed, a plastic chair, monitors blinking softly. Maria's mother lay sleeping, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The rosary still hung from the bed rail, wooden beads catching the light. Henry set the plant on the windowsill. It caught the afternoon sun, leaves green against the glass. That's from your office, Maria said. You used to water it every morning. She nodded slowly. You noticed. Too late. He turned to face her. I noticed too late. Maria sat in the plastic chair beside her mother's bed. Her hand found the old woman's, fingers wrapping gently around the thin wrist. Henry remained standing, hands at his sides. I found something, he said. In my wife's room. A journal. She wrote about you. Maria's expression shifted. Something flickered behind her eyes. She wrote about the accident. Henry continued. About finding you on the street. About paying for your treatment. About staying in touch. As Maria's thumb moved across her mother's knuckles, back and forth, back and forth. Eleanor, she said quietly. She saved my life. I know. She never told you. Henry's throat tightened. She tried. I wasn't listening. The monitors beeped. Outside the window, birds called to each other in the garden below. A soft, ordinary sound. I came to work at your company because of her, Maria said. After she passed, I didn't know how to repay what she'd done for me. I couldn't afford flowers for her grave, couldn't afford a card. So I thought maybe I could take care of the things she used to take care of. Her office, her plants. She paused. You. Henry's chest ached. You were there for 2 years, he said. And I never once. It's okay. It's not okay. His voice cracked. I threw you out. In front of everyone. I treated you like you were nothing. Maria looked at him. Her eyes were calm, patient. You're here now. I should have been here sooner. But you're here. Henry moved to the window, stood beside the plant, looked out at the garden below. Green grass, flowering bushes, a bench where an old man sat reading a newspaper. Ordinary things, simple things. I spent all night thinking about what to say, he said. Had this whole speech planned out, but now that I'm here, I don't know how to. It's okay, Maria said again. Sometimes the words you can't find are the ones that matter most. Henry turned to face her. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry for not seeing you, for not listening, for being so caught up in my own system that I forgot what really matters. Maria rose from the chair, walked to the window, stood beside him. They looked out at the garden together. The afternoon light fell warm on their faces. Eleanor used to tell me something, Maria said. She said, take care of the small things. They grow. Henry nodded. I didn't understand it at first, Maria continued, but I think I do now, do. The small things, the plants, the coffee cups, the little details, they're not small at all. They're everything. They're how we show people we care when we can't say it out loud. Henry's eyes stung. He blinked. I miss them all, and he said, every single one. You see them now. Is that enough? Maria was quiet for a moment. Her fingers touched the plant on the windowsill, brushed the green leaves. I don't know, she said, but it's a start. They stood in silence. The monitors beeped softly. Maria's mother slept on, her breath steady, her face peaceful. Henry looked at the old woman in the bed, frail, fragile, holding on. How is she? He asked. Some days are better than others. Maria's voice was soft. But she's fighting. She's always been a fighter. Like you, Maria smiled. Just a small smile, barely there, but real. Like me. Henry reached into his pocket, pulled out the photograph. Eleanor and Maria, 10 years ago, smiling beside a hospital bed. He handed it to her. Maria looked at it for a long time. Her thumb traced the edge. I remember this day, she said. She brought me flowers, yellow roses, said they were for courage. She believed in you. She believed in everyone. Maria looked up at him. Even you. Henry's throat closed. He couldn't speak. Maria handed the photograph back. Keep it. She would have wanted you to have it. He took it, slipped it into his pocket. The sun began to set. Orange light filled the room, painting the walls, the bed, the two people standing by the window. What will you do now? Maria asked. Henry thought about it. The company, the systems, the routines he had built to protect himself from feeling anything. I don't know, he said. But I think I need to start listening, really listening. To people, to myself, to the things I've been ignoring for too long. Maria nodded. That sounds right, she said. They stood in silence again, comfortable now. Outside, the garden glowed in the fading light. A bird landed on a branch, sang a few notes, flew away. "You can come back," Maria said. "If you want. My mother, she likes company, even when she's sleeping." Henry looked at her, at this woman who had every reason to turn him away, and she was inviting him back. "I'd like that," he said. He left the hospital as the sun touched the horizon. The parking lot was quiet. His car waited, patient and still. He stood beside it for a moment, looking back at the building. 3rd floor, room 318. A woman holding her mother's hand. A plant on the windowsill. Small things. They grow. He got in the car, started the engine, pulled out of the lot. The drive home was quiet. The city passed in soft colors, pink and gold and deepening blue. He thought about Eleanor, about the woman she had saved, about the man she had married, and the man he had become. He wasn't the man she believed he could be, not yet, but maybe, just maybe, he was starting. Some things can't be fixed with money or words. Henry understood that now, understood it in the way his hands felt on the steering wheel, in the weight of the photograph in his pocket, in the quiet ache behind his ribs that wasn't quite pain. Many of us carry things we don't talk about. Many of us have been unseen, overlooked, reduced to less than we are. Perhaps you know what that feels like. Not everything gets resolved. Not every wound closes completely. Sometimes, it's enough to simply stand next to someone who understands and let the silence speak for itself. The road stretched ahead, empty, open. Henry drove toward home. The plant would grow. The garden would bloom. And somewhere, in a hospital room on the 3rd floor, a woman held her mother's hand and watched the last light fade. Small things. They grow. If something in this story stayed with you, a heaviness in the chest, a quiet ache you couldn't quite name, that's all right. You don't need to understand it. Some feelings aren't meant to be explained. They're just meant to be felt. Many of us have carried things quietly. Many of us have worked without being seen, loved without being thanked, given without being asked. Some of us have been the one who noticed everything and said nothing. Some of us have been the one who noticed nothing until it was almost too late. Perhaps you've been both, and that's okay. It doesn't need to be resolved. Not every story ends with answers. Not every wound closes all the way. Sometimes the most honest thing we can do is simply sit with what remains, the tender parts, the unfinished parts, the parts that still ache when we breathe too deeply. You stayed, through the quiet moments, through the heavy ones, through the parts that may have reminded you of someone you knew, or someone you lost, or someone you're still learning to see. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying until the end.